I'm Mike Caudill. We're good now? Okay. All right. I'm Mike Caudill. Been a resident of Winchester, well, since my senior year in high school, and I've been around quite a while. I've known Lee for a long, long time, and many of you in this sanctuary for a long, long time. I've had the opportunity to sing music with Cindy and some of the others here at this church. I've been involved in praise music and worship teams, Sunday schools, different things throughout the church. I started singing actually when my mom would be asked to play the piano. I can remember vividly on Sunday nights at our church when I was just a little kid. And when she would be asked and start coming up, I would follow her because as a young child, we sang hymns around the piano. It was just commonplace. So I just grew up to a great extent in the church. I'm thankful for that. As far as vocationally, I'm a graduate of the University of Kentucky with a degree in accounting. And I've been practicing here. I'm a CPA. Been certified for a long time, since the late 70s, I suppose. But been practicing public accounting for well over 40 years, 40 some odd years. Some of you have been clients of mine for nearly most of that time period. But anyway, that's what I do on a day-to-day basis from the standpoint of I'm involved with taxes. My career started as an intern with the IRS, so I have worked on the inside. Now I'm working on the outside. But that's, honestly, from a vocational standpoint, that's what I do. Do I identify as that? No, I identify as a child of God, just plain and simple. I mean, I'm no better than anyone else. I'm the least of the least. And I'm just thankful that I have a loving Father who sent his son to the cross that I could have eternal life with him. So I've had the opportunities to witness with several of you in different ministries, prison ministries, which even with you, Lee, very impactful. But even you were talking about, and I don't want to get too long-winded here, John, but talking about what went on at Southeastern. Actually, that's where I gave my life to Christ at the campus at Southeastern Christian College when we had in high school, and I was singing music. But you know how you, as a young person, you always, if you grew up in the church, you felt like you were a Christian. Maybe you just didn't really make that, jump in, to say I'm all in. But it was a youthquake in 1972 that I gave my life to Christ, and it was at that campus at Southeastern. So it was like a revival. It was a youth revival. So it's really amazing what's going on, and we need revival badly, and we see signs of it, and I just pray that it'll continue to grow and encompass the entire world. Go ahead, John.
All right. My name is John Higgins. I know most of you. I'm the financial administrator here. I've been with this church going on 13 years, I believe. Been on the board for about 7, serving in the financial position for about 5 now. I currently am a tax analyst for the city of Georgetown. So basically, I'm a tax collector. So hopefully nobody has any rotten tomatoes or anything to throw at me right now. But no, my primary job is just to review taxes submitted by businesses within the city and make sure everything's being filed properly. I actually have the privilege of working with a gentleman that's the director that he was actually in a Dove award-winning Christian rock band. He's very much of the belief that it's not anybody's money, but the individual's money. It's the people's money. It's God's money, and we need to be good stewards of that. So I have a great benefit with working with him. I'm able to actually identify where people are overpaying and help them out and try and show them, okay, this is where you're making some mistakes. Let's fix this. Let's see. As far as that's pretty much the extent of my professional career. I spent a lot of time in restaurants, managing budgets, managing people, and then decided I got really tired of restaurants and wanted something different, so why not taxes? Which is not any easier, trust me. I have to deal with people less, though, which is great. Honestly, as far as how I came to know Christ, it was within this church. I grew up in the Catholic Church, went to Mass 3 times a week, but never really knew Christ. I knew of him, didn't know him. And then as I came to know him, the more I realized just how broken I was and how much I needed him. And there isn't a day that goes by that he doesn't continually remind me just how broken I am and how much I need him, and I'm so thankful for what he's done for me. Just to kind of touch on what's been going on at Asbury, there was an interview I listened to about 2 weeks ago with a man by the name of Adam Curry. Some of you may recognize that name, most of you probably won't. He was actually an MTV VJ back in the 80s, which MTV used to play music videos. But he was on one of the biggest podcasts in the nation, and he got to talking. He's like, I've always been really big into conspiracy theories. But there was one I never really got into, and that was Christianity. So I decided to look at the conspiracy of Christianity. Which at that point I was like, I don't know if I can listen to this guy. But he changed his tune real quick, and he said, the more I looked into it, the more I realized it's real. God is real. Jesus is real. There's no way denying it. The more you look at it, there's no way of denying it. And the interviewer asked him a very pointed question. If there was a way to just download something into your mind that gave you faith, do you think people would take it? And he said, there already is something. It's called the Bible. If you need more faith, just pick it up and read it. And to hear that on, again, one of the biggest interviewing programs in the world, you're talking millions and millions of people hearing this that have never heard that kind of testimony before, is just powerful. And God is doing powerful things all across this world. He is doing tremendous things in individual lives. And it's amazing what he's doing. And yeah, I can't praise him enough for what he's done in my life and what he's done in this church. So
let's sort of start off with what you're hearing or what you've heard, or what as far as finances.
Oh, let's see. There's lots of things I've heard. Some of you have probably heard some of these same things. Like 80% of the currency in circulation right now has been printed within the last couple of years. Not quite true, but this is actually, I've looked at the Federal Reserve site, and this is coming straight from them. The amount of money that's in circulation right now is roughly 150% more than what we had in 2001. Each year they've been increasing the amount of money out there. They have been continually adding more and more into the population. If you look at what's being held in banks and all that, it's just exponential curve. It's been skyrocketing. The reason being is they have to pay for things. In order to pay for things, you've got to print more money. We don't have a way of really increasing the revenue in this country. So if you want to pay for a bill that's just been passed, you just got to print more money. Really the biggest thing that concerns me with some of the things going on is the use of what's called modern monetary theory, which basically states that if you're a government and you have exclusive power to print money, then debt is not an issue to you. You can just print as much money as you want. It's not going to be a problem. That's a lot of what I'm seeing, and that's a lot of where my concern lies as far as what our government is doing with increasing the spending and not really looking at the budget, and then how that plays into the central bank digital currency. It's going to be kind of the same thing. If and when they switch over to that, it's going to be really easy for them to ratchet up how much money is available and who has control of it.
Yeah. Isn't that comforting?
Yeah.
Usually on a weekly basis, probably, and I would say this goes along with the younger generation, about 30% of people in the United States don't use cash at all right now. I mean, they don't carry cash. If you've got kids, it's amazing how they may take a trip somewhere and they've got virtually nothing in their wallet or pocket, but they're just so used to that card, using a debit card or a credit card, That works fine unless we have any kind of an outage to wherever they're going to go spend and the internet's down, then obviously the cards can't be used. You need cash. So the idea of moving to a cashless society has been around for a while. Obviously, with cryptocurrencies currently, Bitcoin, there's several others, Ethereum, Dogecoin, but Bitcoin is the biggie. None of those are federally regulated. I mean, they're not. Nobody's keeping. Well, they're keeping track of it, but nobody's regulating it, and that's why in March, almost a year ago, March of 22, President Biden issued an executive order, which probably some of you are aware of, looking into the idea of the U.S. having some type of a cryptocurrency that is central bank controlled, that has U.S. The thought is to get out, well, let's put it this way. What's being told to us is the thought is to get ahead of other countries that may be trying to do this, that we would be somewhat to speak, the gold standard of federally issued cryptocurrency. Now, I don't know, there might be some of you here in this room that own cryptocurrency, and I'm certainly not, I'm not going to say I'm for or against or anything of that nature. It's just part of it's just part of life now. But I don't know, raise your hands. Are you very familiar with cryptocurrencies? Is anybody, I mean, do you really, if you know how it works, you can probably come up here and give me a lesson. But right now, Bitcoin is the biggie. There's about $19 million worth of Bitcoin in existence. And Bitcoin has a limit of $21 million of Bitcoin, and that's all there's going to be. You know, they do this mining, which is basically companies are setting up, you've heard of mining and blockchain and things of that nature. Mining is just, it's basically where these guys, these absolutely gurus with computers, and they crank and they're able to solve all these mathematical problems that deal with the blockchain so that they know that they could, when it's assessed that they can handle that, then they are issued more Bitcoin. It's about 6 Bitcoins. I think in 2024 it's going to be about half of that. Bitcoin used to be, I mean, it was, when it was trading high, 6 Bitcoin was worth a tremendous amount of money. People are utilizing a lot of assets and time and effort to try to mine. But with the prices falling of Bitcoin now, it's not nearly as feasible and fiscally maybe responsible. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I don't want to go way off, but essentially when you're using cryptocurrencies, every transaction is recorded. And it's recorded, so every one from the first one to the last one, they all are recorded. So the thing about crypto is if the government wants to peep in, they can see everything. That's why there's a little question on your tax return that talks about that. Number one is they give you the opportunity to say, yeah, I have dealings in crypto, but they can tell if you have. I mean, if the government goes that far, they can definitely find it. Go ahead.
Yeah, and the idea behind Bitcoin was to decentralize who had control of the money.
Right. Right.
But again, it uses something called blockchain, which identifies who owns it and who else has owned it ever, it gives you a complete track of where it's been, what it's been used for. But then with this, and granted with Bitcoin, we don't really know a whole lot about the individual that developed this, that kind of put it out in the world. But it created this kind of catalyst, this excitement around this idea of cryptocurrency. And that's where you see all these other ones popping up, Dogecoin, Ether, that kind of stuff. So a lot of people got involved in this really early. A lot of people also lost a lot of money going into these because essentially they're just speculation bets is really what they are. But again, it created a lot of excitement for the ideas of this. So I think with that, it kind of was preparing people for the idea of digital currency for a cashless society.
Joe, you ready to go to some of these questions?
Yeah, let me
Yeah, and if you look at just the history of the United States currency, and at one point it was backed by silver and gold, and then I believe it was in the 1920s or whatever, they did away with silver, where you couldn't exchange your currency for silver. You could still exchange it for gold. And then in the 1970s, we did away with the gold standard completely. At that point, our currency was backed by the U.S. government. That's it. It's worth this much because our government says so. And then it got kind of tied into the petrodollar, where oil was only bought and sold and traded in dollars, which kind of gave the American dollar its valuation and continued to give it strength. There's a lot of countries that want to do away with that. China has been working with Saudi Arabia to start purchasing in yuan, which would devalue the dollar bill if that started happening as well. So again, currently our money has value just because our government says it has value.
But our money also is the world standard.
Exactly.
And that's why it has value.
Right.
And if China and Saudi Arabia, if they dethrone us from that, then who knows what's going to happen
Well, I
from that
heard
perspective.
even last week that Saudi Arabia was, with this World Economic Forum that's going on, that they were pushing Saudi Arabia to go to some kind of, what is it?
The yuan.
A what now?
Yuan?
I don't know about a yuan. It was sort of like a crude, like it has something to do with oil or something. I can't, whatever. But that they would no longer use the dollar. That was last week I heard that.
Well, I'm going to, just from the standpoint of crypto, let me, again, if you're a conspiracy theorist or whatever, even if you're not, I can easily see how it could be, implemented here, going to a cashless society, which if you went cashless, we're not talking about credit cards and debit cards, we're probably talking crypto or some kind of units that each person gets and trades. And I can easily foresee how the government would sell that is, well, with COVID, with all the things that have been going on there, what's one of the dirtiest things you can touch? It's money. I mean, that's obviously, we're all aware of that. I mean, the dollar bills that we all touch, and, they're not sanitized. So the actual cash monies that we deal with is dirty. It saves money if we're not printing it. If the government's not printing it, we wouldn't have coin shortages, things of that nature. So I could easily see how the government could push us to get there. I'm concerned about what happens when we get there. And let me wait on a couple of the reasons why. Number one, well, let me just go on with this. There are a lot of people who don't have bank accounts at all. It would probably amaze us, the number of people who have no bank accounts. Well, then they can't trade. So they're going to have some kind of one of these accounts that's set up. One of the things that would concern me, and I think this is happening in China, is what happens if they attach some type of social performance index to your buying ability. If you don't agree with the government across the, well, you may go and say, I want to buy this. Sorry, your money's not, you can't buy that. You don't have enough because you've been, the government won't allow that due to whatever you've done or whatever you've voted or whatever the case may be. So, those are some issues that I think are real, but on the one hand, they're scary. On the second hand, we know who's still in control. So I think that, the overarching premise here is God is still in control, and we need to seek Him and be more fervent in prayer and certainly in faith. But let me get to at least one question here. It says, will cash keep its value in a central bank economy? What is the risk of social credit score being encouraged by a central bank economy? Well, I think that, it would be my thought that if you have cash, and we probably all have, even if it's a kid's piggy bank, but we all probably have a bunch of coins sitting around. I would assume there would be some kind of an exchange that the government would take your cash and say it's worth this many units or whatever the case may be, or this many Fed coins or whatever you want to call it. But then as far as the valuation, I have no clue. I mean, because I think at that point, to me, the government would have a tremendous, even more control over us now at that point than they do now. And to me, that's the thing that would really concern me, because they would exercise a tremendous amount of weight and control on what we would have and want to enjoy.
And just to touch on that, there are laws in place that U.S. currency is legal tender. There's no way around it. It's good for any kind of debt. However, they've been very careful that private entities aren't forced to take cash, okay? There's some states that have laws on the book that do require companies to take cash payments. Kentucky is not one of those. There's also a history where in World War II, they printed special bills that had Hawaii stamped on it. So in the event that Hawaii was invaded, those bills were no longer valid. So for now, money is absolutely legal. There's not going to be any issue with that not being accepted currency. My concern would be, okay, did they start putting special limitations on, if they start rebranding the money, if they start putting special emblems on them saying, okay, this is good in these instances. That's kind of the things I would be looking out for. And then just changes in any kind of federal law regarding acceptance of cash payments.
Yeah, there are several states that have on their laws, their legislatures have passed that, as John said, that do require businesses to accept cash. But a lot of business, I mean, if you're not required to and you pull out cash money, I know plenty of people who have run into that situation. Then if they pull out their credit card or debit card, then they're obviously charged a fee, which usually is even more than paying cash. I mean, even to the vendor to buy whatever goods they're buying, whether it be at a restaurant, market, whatever the case may be. You want me to go on to another question, or you want one?
Yeah, if you want to.
Okay. Do you believe that there will be holdouts that refuse to go into this system and still use the cash for payments? I would think that once if we go to a cashless society, then you're going to be forced. I mean, you may say, hey, I've got $100. Can you mow my yard and I'll give you a cash of $100? Well, the person who's going to receive that is going to have to hope that there's somebody else that might be willing to take that cash. So, but the concern that I would have there is, look at all the things the money that you are required to spend just to live, whether it be groceries, utilities, whether if you've got a home payment, a car payment, if you've got credit cards, anything of that nature that would not accept cash. I mean, they can control you. I mean, you just absolutely have no control over that. You would be required to go into the system to make those payments. So.
And I do believe early on there are going to be some individuals, some entities that decide, no, we're not going along with this. My concern in that point would be what we saw just a couple years ago with the various mandates that came down regarding the vaccine. Companies are going to be enticed to go along with this. And there's no way around that, unfortunately. There's always going to be people willing to stand up and fight, though.
It's just like what Mike said, and this thing of reality of a social sport. And what's happening in China right now, there are people that had their whole life savings. They just came and told them that you don't have it. It's gone.
Well, and even
What they did, they gave them, if you had a red sticker, you were socially, you could buy, sell, and do whatever you needed to. But if you had a blue sticker, they gave them, all these people, blue stickers, and this is why they got some riots. The media's not letting us see everything happening in China. But all these people that are
Well, even if you look at Canada, just last year, they froze bank accounts because there were people that did not agree with the government. They even went as far as to seize their digital assets as well, like cryptocurrency, stuff like that. And that's Canada. That's just right north of us. So yeah, I mean, there's always these potential. There's always this potential of these things to happen. But again, we just need to remain faithful. You know, if you would have asked me 5 years ago if I thought we would see any of these things, if, you know, looking at Matthew 24, Revelation 13, those kind of things, I would have said no. Maybe some of the things that Jesus talked about in Matthew 24, but I didn't think I would see anything. But the fact of the matter is, in order for all this to transpire, there has to be a building up process. It's not going to just happen at the snap of a finger. These systems have to be kind of brought into place over time. It's kind of the frog in the boiling pot method, where you just gradually crank up the heat until you just don't realize you're boiling. So I think that's a lot of what we're seeing is just this gradual process, this continual step towards that one world government, that one world currency.
And prayerfully, we will not be here.
Amen.
I'm part of a group that's called Make Americans Free Again, which is nonpartisan. It's basically pushback medical tyranny. And there's other patriotic influences in that group. But we have been pushing people not to comply with this oncoming digital currency and to use cash as much as possible. Because when you use your credit card, you are basically putting the nail in your own coffin faster. So the thing is to use cash as much as possible to slow this down. But once we go to a completely cashless society, then the influences are coming in and saying, "Oh, are you vaccinated? Do you have, certain things lined up?" Just like Trudeau in Canada, if you're not on the right political side, these things are going to be coming, but we have to slow it down as much as we can. And our group has just stresses use cash, use cash. When you go to the store, when you get your paycheck, pull out a bunch of money and do it for your groceries, everything, except when you're ordering Amazon. You need to have your
Right. I'm in agreement with that. But I'm, especially traveling, most of the places that I have seen clients have their identity stolen, if I had to, I would say the state that I have seen ranked number one in my book is Florida. And so I try, if I'm in Florida, I try to pay cash for virtually everything, or I utilize a credit card but if I'm on the road, and you buy gas, I mean, you don't know, but if you're established, if you go to the same place, time and time again, say in an out-of-state place or even out of town, you may feel comfortable because you know the people. And so, but I'm with you from the standpoint of maybe delaying this. Cash is still king. But if the government could cripple cash in a heartbeat by forcing everyone to go crypto or cashless, I should say, and then that's a whole new ballgame that we're talking about here. So I'm with you for now. I'm definitely, and I think that what's really interesting, I think the older generation pays more in cash than the younger. The younger kids, seriously, I think if you had 10, 20 to 30-year-old kids here, and you asked them to give you, all the cash they had in their wallets combined, you may not be able to buy a Happy Meal. So, you know, it's just really interesting. So, I mean, their thought process is already going, I mean, it's geared toward not having cash, whereas we all have been.
I think something else is, I'm trying to think of the man's name who does all the surveys and things, George, who now? I think that's who it was. He's come out and he said that the Z generation, that's the kids that are coming behind the millennials, I guess that's right, Z generation. That he said it is gonna be the first generation in America that will be a post-Christian generation. And he said, if you take that same block of people and now they're gonna be able to vote, what that's gonna do.
Yeah. I've got another question here. It says, why do we hear an arbitrary exchange rate if we have to turn in cash? Well, if you're talking about currency, I don't know if you're talking about exchange rates for our money to other countries, because there's not a centralized banking system that determines if it's crypto, what crypto is worth. I mean, you know, because crypto is just based upon supply and demand, you know, whatever the people, and it's not absolutely not regulated. But currently, right now, there is the Department of the Treasury. I believe this. If I've got this wrong, whoever wrote this, correct me. But if you're thinking maybe different currencies throughout the world, you know, the Department of the Treasury comes up with, I believe it's even monthly, the exchange rates, because I've got clients that have foreign currencies and we're, you know, or transactions, and we have to, you know, calculate the exchange rate at times to determine what their taxable income is. Yeah. You know, the interesting thing is nobody knows. I would hope so. Well, yeah, right. Yeah, right now, I mean, let's make the assumption that we would still be talking in U.S. dollar terms. So if they had a $100,000 loan, in my mind, they would still have a $100,000 loan. It's just going to be serviced with non-cash, crypto, say, type, and whatever cash we've got, we turn in, it would be dollar for dollar. I mean, but you know, we're speculating here because we don't know. But that would be my guess, is that as long as we're still dealing with the dollar being the standard, that we would still deal with U.S. dollars, although we all know that with inflation and recession, sometimes the dollar's worth more or less buying power. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. That's the issue there. Unless they're bartering with somebody else, they're trading service for service. Yeah, those are the people. Those people are going to feel it because they can't do that anymore. So everything's going to be reported, which means, again, let's say when it comes to tax time, since we're here in tax time, those transactions are going to be recorded. So the government is going to know if somebody has been working on the side and made X number of dollars. Yeah, go ahead.
With all this that we're talking about, and just look at where we sit right now with our pay you office closing down because they want everybody to pay bills electronically or mail them in. So many of us are going to the fact where we're paying our utility bills and lots of other bills electronically. What's to keep the government from looking at that? They can also look and see what we have invested here or in our savings and checking accounts and saying, you've got too much. Boom. We're going to take some. We're going to freeze your assets, certain assets. MasterCard and Citibank is already doing that in New York.
Already doing what?
Keeping track.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Like, there's different Christian groups or different Christian groups,
Well, right, and you say in New York, but these credit card companies are required now to report to the government, the IRS, all the credit card transactions over a certain amount. So if you're well, let's just say you're a retailer, and you have so many credit card transactions that amount to so much, and they're wanting this to be very small. It's a little bit higher than that, but you're going to get a form. I think it's 1099-K, I believe. Yeah, that's going to show by month, the total sales that were through those credit cards and the total for the year. So they're already doing that. I mean, they're required to. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, it used to be, I believe, what, $20,000 they had to report. They've now lowered that to $600 in total transactions. And that's all your digital platforms like PayPal, Etsy, those kind of things. So they're already kind of getting their hands in this and talking about with, that gig economy. That's really what they're seeking here is, okay, how can we see these transactions? How can we have these reported? And in all actuality, anything $600 and up was supposed to be reported anyways. It just wasn't always kind of done, so to speak. So this is just kind of tightening up those kind of transactions. Now, to kind of touch on what you were talking about with the banks, there's a question we have. Chase Bank has stopped doing business with Christian organizations. Will this spread to Winchester banks? So I think a lot of it just comes down to, are those your large banks that are located, in New York, those kind of places, or are these local banks? I don't feel like a local bank would necessarily go that route. A lot of it just comes down to the leadership and what kind of pressure they have from the government or larger entities.
But you have the choice where to bank.
Absolutely.
And I think that's one thing that maybe in some of these major cities, they've forgotten that. But we, in a local environment, you still have choice. And I think that plays a big part. I think that, well, go ahead. You've got another question there. I know you do, so I'll let you go ahead.
Well, yeah, this is a little bit different, but we've had a Chinese weather balloon shot down, one object shot down over Alaska, one over northern Canada, one shot down over Lake Huron today. China says that there is an object off their coast. Do you think that any of these are scare tactics to usher in the cashless society, 15-minute cities, and everything of the end times, the objects being called UFOs, which would explain the rapture? Honestly, I think, there's a lot of things going on that are kind of trying to prepare us or to move us towards certain things, to move us towards these, the cashless society, the one world government, that kind of thing. With the weather balloons and all that, I don't really know if these are just scare tactics. I think right now with what's going on in the world, there's a lot of concern. You've got the war in Ukraine, China's posturing towards Taiwan. I think every country kind of wants to have an idea of what the other one is thinking, what they're doing. And they're going to do things like this. They're going to kind of test the limits. They're going to test for vulnerabilities, kind of see where other countries are able to be manipulated, where they can get a foothold in. But again, I think it just all comes down to what's useful for the end result.
I've had some people call me that are in armed services that have said that they have not been ordered up, but they have been put on alert. Another thing I was just going to say is, years ago, I used to hear about a group of people called the Illuminati. And I thought, right? But I will tell you this, I really believe this World Economic Forum is a big deal. And a lot of things, what you get on their website, you see, and some of the guys, one of the guys that's a Jewish guy from over, they're listening to. But if you read a lot of that stuff, one of the first things they say of their different points, first thing is that you will not own anything, but you'll like it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think we had a question. It could be, I don't think that they're going to try to, in my mind, I don't see that happening. I think it's just going to be, we're going to go to a digital currency dollar because it's safer, it's easier, nobody has to touch it, nobody's going to break into your home to steal it. You know, that's to me that's how I would envision it. I could be totally wrong. I think we're all speculating at this point, so we're just talking out loud some of our thoughts. But to me, I don't think they have to crash the dollar. I think that would do more harm to the United States to crash it rather than just say, you know, as we evolve, because we're evolving a great deal when you know, not quite half, but somewhere 30 or 40% of our 30% of our people don't on a weekly basis don't even use cash. You know, they're used to using their card or whatever. So what makes the difference if they're using something else that's they don't have to worry about the cash? I think that the concerns again, though, there are limits. You know, there are always issues with all of these. Number one is the internet has to be strong everywhere. You know, if you have a time where the internet's down, and how many people have experienced a time when the internet's been down? I'll give you a good example. I really, you know, it's kind of, you know, like I was having dinner with somebody, or excuse me, breakfast with. I'm not going to say who it was, but I was having breakfast, and they said, "Hey, I'll get it." It's like, okay, and I said, "No, I'll get it," and they said, "No, I'll get it." So. They go up, they come back, you'll have to get it. Their internet, their card reader's down, they can't take my card and I don't have the cash. You know, it's one of those things. So, you know, those things can always happen, and they happen at the most inopportune time. So I don't know how we get beyond that if we're dealing with a cashless society, because there's so much infrastructure issues. It's kind of like infrastructure on a multitude of things, like with electric cars. I mean, you know, I don't want to go there, but you know, you can. I mean, just from the internet standpoint. So, to me, there are a lot of problems if we go, and nothing says that we're going. I mean, we may never see this, but it certainly looks like it's heading that way, and maybe to be prepared. And how do we prepare for it? Yeah, I don't have any. Does anybody else have any questions? Well, hold on. I'll get to you in just a second. Up back here.
What about the ability to have gold and silver on hand
And use it as what?
gold and silver.
I mean,
Gold and silver for bartering.
well, I think, again, you could always use it. I think we were mentioned over here, I think gold and silver would be fine from a bartering standpoint, but I think it would also, from digital currency, could maybe shoot a hole in that.
It really comes down to is who's willing to take it, where are they going to be able to use it?
Yeah.
What's the value of that to the individual that you're bartering with? I just want to kind of circle back on something with digital currency. He was kind of talking about the infrastructure. When you think about the amount of power a computer uses, and then you start thinking about the amount of power a server uses, there's going to be a big demand, a big draw of power to try and cover all these servers, tracking all these transactions, keeping up with who has what funds and how much they have. That's going to be a lot of strain on the system that we have. So there's going to be a lot of things that are going to have to change within our country, I think, to really fully realize a digital currency from that standpoint without completely crashing. Oh, I know. I'm aware. There's push for solar and wind, too, which aren't as reliable. So there's a lot of questions I have with going this route and how they would actually pull it off. I will say, Luke, I'd given you a website if you could pull that up. So if you scroll down a little bit, so that map right there is actually shows you what countries are pursuing digital currency right now and where they're at in the development process. You see United States, Canada, where that like turquoise color, we're just beginning the process. We had a trial run out of New York that was just purely dealing with wholesale banking. So large transactions between government entities and large businesses, that kind of stuff. You see Asia over there, a lot of green. They're kind of in that end phase of the development of it. They've got a lot of systems in place. They're all operating on different processors, different code, different types of currency. But they also all developed cross-border systems as well, where they can make exchanges between different countries. So that's really what we need to watch, is what's going on in Asia. Because I think once that's up and running, you're going to see everything just kind of rev up and kick up as far as what other countries are doing.
Any other questions? Yeah, I just want to know, why if it goes to the, like the same currency, like the digital currency instead of cash? And I mean, if people would have a lot of killing that way, if they do that, they can't cause, like, cause don't work, you see people get hungry, they need food, they will cut somebody or that way, that's what these drugs a lot of people do, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And again, I think, if we look at what a one world currency means in the end times, is that, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that if we go cashless, that means we're taking the mark of the beast, by no means. If this is the mark of the beast and it comes into implementation, we shouldn't be here, right? So if this comes about and we see that one world currency and the mark of the beast, you're going to be forced to do this. You're going to have to take that mark. That's the only way you're going to be able to buy food. It's the only way you're going to be able to exist in society, is by going this route. So yeah, there are going to be some people that are severely hurt by this. But again, once that comes around, we shouldn't be here.
And I would say one other thing too. I think all of us envision that if it comes to something like this or somewhere down the road, times are going to get hard. And I wouldn't be surprised that there are a lot of people in this room that have taken somewhat precautions to start building up their, whatever you want to say, stockpiles, whether it be food, whether water, whatever the case may be. But at the same token, I think that what's really important is for us to get through these difficult times, we're going to have to do it together.
Right.
I don't see how, if it gets to the point to where food is scarce and somebody over here has been, stockpiling, that's not going to be good. I mean, from the standpoint, it'll be good for them, but I think it's going to, if other people are looking for it, it's going to be difficult. The way I see it is as Christians and even as communities, but hopefully we won't be here at that point, and prayerfully we won't. But if we are, the way I see us getting through situations and difficult times is doing this together as a church. And maybe we also, it'll give us tremendous opportunity to witness to those about, because people will be desperate. Yeah.
Anybody else?
One more. She's got one more.
Somebody?
Yeah, over here, the lady.
Okay, yeah. Did you say Greece?
Missouri.
Missouri.
Isn't there a bank out west that has now its money back and ownership, or there's something, have you heard about that?
I had not. I did know there were some states that were kind of exploring with changing up some of their laws when it came to currency and what was accepted. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was one out there that went to a gold standard.
I mean, you could always, I mean, gold and silver both have, if you want to say exchange rates, just like stocks or whatever, you know what they're trading at on any particular day. So maybe that's what they're talking about. I don't know. But that, I mean, to me, that would be pretty easy to ascertain the value.
Well, let me just share with you just a little bit, and we'll finish up, and I'll get you out here. But we within our church, we believe, and let me tell you why we're doing this. We're doing everything we feel like we need to do to prepare our church for what's ahead. You know, I don't know why it is, but for years I've told our church that one of the problems I think we've had the idea, we're a church that we're premillennial, pre-rapture, that we believe that we believe that the rapture is the next event that's going to take place, according to 1 Thessalonians 4. That the dead in Christ will rise first, and we which are alive and remain shall be caught up in the air to be with the Lord, and so shall we ever be with the Lord forever. So we believe that's what we're looking for. We believe that Matthew 24, Luke 21, Mark 13, we believe that those chapters predominantly are talking about the second coming and not the rapture. But we do believe there's some verses in there that refer to the rapture. So we believe that the rapture occurs first, and then that ushers in the 7-year tribulation time, which is going to be the worst time in the history of the world, and that we don't believe we're going to be here. And we believe there's enough evidence through Scripture that tells us that God's going to save us from that wrath to come in Thessalonians and other places. But if maybe you don't believe that, maybe you're an all-millennialist or a post-millennialist or whatever, then that's fine. We'll just wave at you on the way up. Anyway, so I'm just kidding you. But here's the thing. One of the things I think that what we have misunderstood was this, and that is that the Bible teaches us, I think we've thought that there's just going to be a clear-cut thing when the rapture takes place and we're out of here. And I've told our church for years, every time I've read Psalms 91, that it says 1,000 will fall by your side and 10,000 by your right hand, but it will not come near thee. Only with your eyes will you see the destruction of the wicked. And I really believe that that's what that's referring to, that we're going to see, to some extent, we're going to see things get worse and worse and worse and worse to prepare. And then the rapture takes place. I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk up to the rapture. I think we're going to see a lot of things happen and a lot of different things that are going to be tough times for us. And we got to prepare for that. And so what does this mean for you? It means this. It means you need to be closer to the Lord than you ever have been. And I believe, the Bible says in Hebrews that God's going to shake up everything that can be shaken. The only things that are going to be left are those things that cannot be shaken. And what is he saying to us? I think he's trying to get us ready. I think all the things that are happening in our country right now are God simply saying to us, do you believe me? Do you trust me or not? I think that's what he's doing with us. So I would say that you got to get ready. And so every single way, spiritually giving myself over to Bible study and prayer all the time as much as I possibly can, and in practical ways. One of the practical ways that our church has already done, we had a group of people that were, they were tree huggers, basically what you could call them. But they were people that were, help me out, Rose, where are you? What are you, and where's Tim and them, or Jane Ellen? What do we call it? They're preppers. And so we got a whole committee together, and we actually put a book together. It's about that thick. And in that book, it tells you how to can. It tells you how to do different things that you would never, how to do all, what are some of the things we...
There's first aid, there's emergency preparedness for hurricane or tornadoes and earthquakes.
Yeah.
People that you train in these kinds of
Right, yeah.
how to do things and how to help protect yourself.
Now some people would call us a bunch of conspirators, but I'd rather be called that and be ready for when something does happen. And so what we're fixing to do now in the next few months ahead, we're going to start offering classes on how to can. If you've ever canned, you didn't blow your kitchen up or something, then that's what we're going to do. We're going to teach you how to can. We're going to other things. How do what if the electricity or the gas was cut off from your home? How would you stay warm? It's things like that. Those things are in there. I'm serious. Or what can you eat? What are some, and I know every time that, and just like what Mike said, every time that we go to the grocery store, we don't go in and come out with big cases of stuff, but we'll go in and we'll buy extra little cans here to put them away. And so as a result of that, just trying to be ready. We don't know what's going to happen. And so anyway, okay? But we're glad. I agree 100% with what was also said here, that it's time for us to look to the Lord. You know, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not into your own understanding. And that means quit trying to figure out what God's doing. But in all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He's going to direct our path. I thank you for being here tonight, and we'll be dismissed with a word of prayer.